Um, Welcome to Festival Chat 2020. Thank you very much for joining our session. Before we start, there's just a little bit of housekeeping. Please be on mute unless you're actually speaking. This is a live event and it's scheduled to last for 90 minutes. So our presentation is about 70 minutes and there's some films in there as well. And then we really very much welcome comments, questions, after we've finished the presentation. There hopefully will be 20 minutes or so for questions. There's a chat code of conduct, which my glamorous assistant Hilary is going to share the link in the chat box. So please have a look at the code. Essentially, the code just says, be respectful of others, and if you're not, we'll switch you off. It's my absolute privilege to introduce you to our wonderful team, the Maiden Migration Collective. Everyone's going to introduce themselves and their works in progress individually, but before they do, I'll just give a quick overview of the background to the project. And rather than ask you all to look at my ugly mug while I do that, I have prepared, I hope, some slides which you can look at instead. Here we go. My name is Dr. Rachel Kiddy. I'm a postdoctoral researcher at the School of Archaeology, University of Oxford, where I have a British Academy funded project called Migrant Materialities. At the start of 2020, I was very busy leaping through all manner of bureaucratic and logistical hoops, applying for visas and organising accommodation and flights for a collaborative community archaeology workshop, which would have brought together 15 people, a mix of migrants, refugees, researchers, a poet, an architect and a filmmaker. This wholly participatory community archaeology workshop was due to take place in Oxford, face to face, between the 23rd and 30th of March, which sadly was the same week that the UK went into lockdown. Initially, I spiraled into a pit of intellectual doom, not knowing how we could continue to co-interpret all manner of physical artifacts. For example, personal belongings, photos of places and spaces, small utilitarian kitchen objects, special clothes, jewellery, board games. The people who were due to attend the physical workshop were going to bring these objects with them as far as possible physically to Oxford. And so the plan had been to spend a week together co-interpreting, co-documenting all of these things using a mixed media approaches. And then we were going to co-design a public heritage exhibition on that material culture of contemporary forced displacement in Europe. Forced to move everything online and having lost the lion's share of funding to non-refundable things such as unused visas, plane and coach tickets, I spent a few months reshaping the event so that it took place over Zoom as a series of fortnightly 3-hour online meetings. Working together remotely since May, we've become a smaller collective. Sadly, several of the people who were due to take part in the face-to-face workshop were unable to continue to take part online because they live in refugee camps with little or no internet access, or they have no smartphone or computer. Or, in some cases, they are currently negotiating the very harshest conditions that migrants into Europe face, stuck living in forests in Eastern Europe or homeless and undocumented in Greece. And for these people, it's simply not safe or practical to take part in an online community workshop. But they remain important contributors, and I wish to acknowledge them as necessarily anonymised or co-authors. And while I'm on this tack, I want to thank those members of the Maiden Migration Collective from whom you will hear shortly, my friends and colleagues, Gunel, Rajni, Saratel, Ferouz, Hassan, Mimi, Sana, Caleb and Owen, without whose continued voluntary commitment, enthusiasm and creativity, this project would have totally flopped back in March. The initial project set out to blend established community archaeology research practices with architectural spatial mapping techniques, creative writing and filmmaking, and was to document and we were going to reflect upon these objects, places, journeys, people and things, material and visual culture, all of which can be approached archaeologically. These things which people encounter during lived experiences of forced displacement across 3 countries in Europe, the UK, Greece and Sweden. At the end of the 5-day intensive workshop, we had intended to have co-designed the primary layout of a public exhibition, which was due to take place in Oxford at the Arts at the Old Fire Station. Aside from trying to find ways to meaningfully co-interpret archaeological data, physical, tangible things, remotely and online, we face several other significant challenges. First, we're working across several time zones and numerous languages and levels of language ability. I think most people will now be familiar with Zoom fatigue. It's frankly exhausting communicating on screen for hours each day, and so imagine trying to do that in your non-native language. Never mind getting your head around the concept of contemporary archaeology. Secondly, everyone in our collective has a day job and/or must attend language training, school or university. Some of us are also carers of other family members or young children, and several of us have moved house since the workshops began, changed jobs, had to negotiate physical places with internet and few distractions just so that we could practically take part in the online workshops. We've had to work around these commitments and circumstances as best we can. Finally, within our small collective, there are people whose countries of origin continue to be at war. This brings a level of continuous stress and pain that is incomprehensible to those of us lucky enough not to share this experience. There have been days where we've met online to discuss data or muse over memory and material culture and how these are interlinked, when archaeology has felt to me to be a pointless luxury in a broken world. On those days, we've used reflective practices, which we'll share with you in this presentation, to check in with one another as best we can. We live in different cities, in different countries. These practices have resulted in us recognizing our shared humanity, if not shared life experiences. They have shown us time and again that people think, live, and remember with things. Our lives are given meaning and structure, or not, by the material conditions which surround us and by the familiar routines and customs in which we engage. Our lives are shaped by our memories, and we cannot have memories that do not also have material dimensions. This is what this project seeks to explore. What happens when people are forced to flee quickly from all that they know? How does this experience affect a person? What happens to the few small objects that people are able to bring with them? How do these objects help people reorient themselves in new places? In this co-presented talk, we start to answer some of these questions by sharing pieces of mixed media reflective work, which we've produced under lockdown. These are all works in progress. Everything we share with you this evening is unfinished, the middle of an idea, if you will. We are open to respectful discussion about what works and what is less clear. Our aim is to make migration human again, to harness material and visual culture in such ways that migrants are conceived as individual people with real lives, real families, and real feelings. They are not just numbers, as the media and most European governments try to convince us. We champion arts as research activism. We aim to instrumentalise material culture shared here to advocate for better rights for refugees, to articulate what it is like to be made in migration. Checked plan. Onto maps. Spotlight, Senna.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sana Morani. I am an associate professor in spatial practice and architecture at the University of Plymouth. And before that, I am also an immigrant to this country, and I came as a PhD student from Iraq originally, which is where I got my training in. But I'm not your conventional architect, just like Rachel, not your conventional archaeologist. This project and other collaborations that I've been working on with Rachel on, we have found lots of synergies in the work that we convey, which is basically looking at tracing of material culture, but through different means. We nearly use the same language, but we use it very differently as well. And the way, the medium that I use is through cognitive mapping. It's privileged to be working with a group of people who all have been putting quite a lot of time, like Rachel was saying, and this is a collaborative kind of effort. So the idea is that we work on maps that elicit memories and trace back where people have left off. And it's not only tracing journeys, but it's also tracing history. And the idea is that we are building futures by looking at those traces. It's a kind of like Rachel was explaining, it's mid kind of way, and we are working on the projects to then come together. The point of the mapping is that we will also try and find a tapestry of joint themes and understandings between all of the areas and the people that we're looking with on. And this is partly to also portray the fact that it is not a homogeneous way of looking at displacement. There is no way of being able to identify it unless we reach to the personal level of it. So we use cognitive mapping, which taps into memory, and this is a big point of the work that we do. And in a minute, we're going to be working, talking to one of the participants who's going to explain to you afterwards his journey into a map. But that's one example. We used lots of different ways of approaching maps, and they're all very personal. We went very deep into the explanations of how people's history can be portrayed into images, but also into maps. So maps are in the making, but they're always going to be in the making. So see them as unfinished, but they will never be finished. And this is how we kind of look at the colliding of all of the maps once we kind of put them all together. So it's my pleasure to introduce to you Hassan, one of our participants. He's originally from Syria, and Hassan's going to say hello, and then his project is going to appear.
Hello, I'm Hassan. I came from Syria, and by working with Made in Migration, I have done a map. I bring from Syria a lot of photos that was in my hard disk in Syria, and in some way I had them here in hard disk here in Sweden. A lot of photos from Syria and from my journey in Lebanon, Turkey, Greece, Macedonia, Serbia, and Sweden, surely. So I put a map of Syria, and I put the most important things that I think from my photos. I choose little photos, and I put things from my village in Golan Heights, and I put photos when I was very young, when I was in my work, in my way to work in Damascus, in photos that I take. Most of those photos I take. So, and I think this a symbol of my memories there. And surely I put a map of Lebanon, and I have little photos from Lebanon. Even I visited Lebanon many times, but I have little photos. Then my journey through Turkey, but it's not finished. So I just have a map of Syria, Turkey, and Lebanon until now. But I'm working on Greece, and Macedonia, and Serbia, and surely Sweden. So I hope Owen will show you the video, and you will enjoy it. And if there is any question, I am ready to answer. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Hassan Al Tawil, and as I am part of Made in Migration project, so I have done this map, and I wanna show you this little map that talking about my journey from Syria to Sweden. And here in Syria I have put a lot of my memories and photos that belong to me. I think there is a lot of photos, small photos in this map, like when I was young, small baby, and this my family. This when I first day in the school, and this in old Damascus, and this in my village in Golan Heights. This when I was a teenager. This train station in old Damascus, and this cookies in they sell in old Damascus. This hotel in Damascus, and this my village in Golan Heights. This the first telephone that mobile phone that I have ever had, and it's the home, the gate of the home that I lived in Damascus. It's in my work in insurance. This daughter of my sister, Damascus, and this observation station for the UN in Golan Heights between Syria and Israel, and this my village. And here you can see the chicken point for UN near my village. This water storage for my home, for the street that I lived in Syria, in Damascus. And you can see a tank shot. I get a tank shot here. And here on the checkpoint between observation point between Syria and Israel. This figs that we grow in my village, and this office that I have worked in Syria for 7 years in insurance. It was on borders between Syria and Lebanon. This the military book or military documents that every guy have to had in Syria, that because it's compulsory to make a military service. And this the city that I lived in, it's called Jaramana, near Damascus. This on my way between Damascus and Syrian Lebanese borders. Here in Lebanon, I have little memories when I visit Lebanon, I think in 2014, and this also in another visit. And this the last time I saw my brother and we say goodbye. And then I moved to Turkey for, I think it was less than 2 weeks. I was in Adana. I come to this airport. Then we go to Izmir. And in Izmir I lived in small hotel for a few days. And this near the hotel is a train station, I think. And this in airport between Adana and Izmir, I think is Adana airport. Yes. Thank you for listening.
That was Hassan's really incredible, unfinished, but brilliant map.
Thank you.
Hassan, I'm sure we'll get questions about it, but we'll wait to the end, okay?
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay. So now we move on to a really lovely couple that I met when I went to Krokom in northern Sweden. They're married. Sagatal is an artist and owned a cafe in Aleppo, a literary cafe, and Rajni is his very beautiful wife who was a teacher. and they work together. So they work together in many ways. So I will stop chattering and they can. Their film is explanatory. They'll tell you what it's about.
Hello everyone. So Yes.
Hello. Thank you, Rachel. So maybe I present myself. My name is Saratel, and my name meaning it's question to God. So by my destiny, I am questions in everywhere. I live in Aleppo. I'm totally blind from 2004. And now I live in a very beautiful small village in Sweden. They're called Krokom. It's a very small village. So the video, what I made with this program, it's about what I do now. I had as a Richard say, a small Archiver cafe library. And in the video, you will see how I change the place to idea, to art piece, because I can't take the place with me. I am immigrant now, and my father was immigrant, and my grandfather was immigrant. So I think we as a family, we as immigrant by default. So I opened the place that I called it Archiver, and because the war, when I close it, I make a small idea. You will see it in the video. I talk in Arabic. What is this idea? And then Rajni will read a text. I wrote it by Arabic, and Rajni translated to English. It's try to explain the idea of what I made. So show the video and then we can speak. Thank you.
مرحبا، كيفكم؟ رح أحكي عن الارتريفر. الارتريفر كان محل، كان يعني شيء ملموس بحلب، ونتيجة 100 شغلة يمكن ما بحب هلا أحكي عنها، هالمحل تغير، واليوم صار عبارة عن كتاب صغير. هو هاد، تخيلوا كتاب عادي صار جواته مكتبة، وصار اسمه محل الارتريفر، صار اسمه ارتريفر in your home. في معه اي دي صغيرة بتنحط هون مع الكتاب، بتشرح المسج وبتكون باسم الشخص. طبعا هذا الكتاب هلا عم بشتغله لشخص هو من السويد، بحياته ما راح على حلب وما بيعرف الارتريفر، بس الفكرة طارت من حلب وصارت هون بالسويد، وهذا الزلمة اليوم حب انه يكون عنده الارتريفر in your home. هذا الكتاب اللي بسويه انا، هدول الكرتونات هن عبارة عن لايك شيلف صغيرة، بحطهم هيك بطريقة معينة، هون بقصها وبلزقها، وهدول اللي هون عم بتشوفون هن كتب بطريقة مختلفة. راجني ساعدتني في انه نسويهم. هدول مثلا في كتب هون، في عنا عدة كتب انا حاطهم هون، في شي مثل الدي في ديز، هدول لايك دي في دي. سو كل هدول انا بجمعهم بحطهم بالمكتبة، وبيصيروا مكتبة مسميها الارتريفر in your home. بعد شوي رح تشوفوا الصور عن كل شي اشتغلته لحد هلا، وراجني رح تقرا نص بالانجليزي، هو نص كتبته بيعبر عن الارتريفر in your home. ميرسي، باي باي.
I packed my dreams and opinions in a bag and left. My last day in Aleppo was harsh. I stood in front of my library cafe for the last time. Stacked books, bright smiles, optimistic voices. Will you all stay here? Will we be parted just like this? I don't know how the years passed, but anyways, today I'm geographically distanced from all of the above, far from Artreaver, my library cafe, my books and my hopes. I live in a small city with its own potentials, great spirit and good inhabitants. My everyday life is passing in peace. So I open my bag of dreams and opinions once again, and suddenly remembered a small book which I had made long ago, a small bookshelf embedded in a simple book. I was struck by a stunning idea in my head. What if I made several examples of the mini bookshelves and revived my library? And on the second day began to realize the idea. A few days after, a lot of orders for the bookshelf were followed. I called the idea Art River in Your Home. It seemed like all the books, friends, relationships, feelings, paintings, sounds were embodied in this small masterpiece and revived Art River. Today, the idea of Art River began a new journey. A journey through the spirits and hearts, whose goal, as it was from the beginning, is to spread the culture of reading, resulting to awareness, love, peace, and acceptance of the different ones. From the heart of the river, Sagatel, 6th September 2019, Krokom, Sweden.
Sagatel and Rajni, do you want to say anything else?
No comment. No. No comment.
I can feel the questions burning. I'm so lucky because I have one of Sagatel's bookcases that he made for me.
Yes.
But yeah, I'm sure there'll be questions. So now we're going to move on to Caleb, who is we're very lucky to work with all of these brilliant people, but we're super, super lucky to work with Bristol City poet, Caleb Parkin. And he will introduce himself, no doubt, about how we've been using creative writing in this project as a way to reflect upon objects.
Thanks, Rachel. Yeah, hello everyone. Really huge thanks for being here, and thanks to our amazing, inspiring group. It's always lovely to see you all, and to chat for having us as well. So as Rachel mentioned, I'm a poet and facilitator and performer, and recently the Bristol City Poet for a couple of years. And for me, poetry and facilitating, running groups, is kind of two wings on a bird. Like, I see them as part of the same practice, my writing and offering space to others to write. Last year, I graduated with an MSc in creative writing for therapeutic purposes, which is a discipline that kind of focuses on process, resilience, personal growth and empowerment. And my research dissertation was around museums and galleries and writing in those settings. So that got me thinking about material culture, materiality, how we work with objects that might be a kind of synecdoche, which means like a small part that represents something much bigger, like a mirror for how we see ourselves, or a shoe for a journey, for example. So I'm really interested in objects and how we work with them. And so, of course, for this group and for migrants, objects can become really significant. And it's always really amazing to see Sagatel's bookshelves that he produces, and to hear, about all of the material cultures within our group. So it was also, I really love that line, I packed my dreams and opinions in a suitcase, in Sagatel's piece of writing there. And for me, that's much like a poem. And I guess part of my role is to kind of point out, or kind of work with people to realize the poetry that you're already speaking and that already is there in your words, imaginations, experiences and lives, and to offer some shapes for them. So I guess CWTP, as I call it, creative writing for therapeutic purposes, is a kind of safe way in to both celebrate positive memories and potentially to explore difficult ones too, through careful kind of guiding in and building and development. And I think of poems as a kind of container, so for experience. And we worked with some particular forms. We worked with an I Come From poem, which comes from a Robert Sita poem and Ella George Lyons, and there's lots of them out there now. We worked with a praise poem that you'll hear later on, which is from Mark Strand, a poet who uses this I praise beginning line. And there's loads of praise poems out there as well. There's another form we didn't use, which is called What Every Woman Should Carry, but literally is about a bag, and the poem itself is like a handbag of abstract and concrete things. So these kind of model poems, I think, free us up from the idea of poetry sometimes too, because I think the idea of poetry can be a problem. People get kind of a bit scared by it. I do sometimes, and it's my job. But so I really like to be able to use my skills as a poet to kind of find ways in and make these forms accessible, to kind of break them down so that every group member can find an accessible way into that writing. We did some kind of mind mapping, and we also used a kind of close technique where we kind of mind map material, and then we'd use a kind of closed version, which means there are gaps that you put particular types of word into. And hopefully this kind of made things more accessible for those with varying levels of English in the group as well, and various experiences of creative writing as well. My hope as well is that creative writing in this context could be about speaking truth to power and speaking back to power. And one activity we used was with the visa immigration form, which I kind of harvested some questions from. And then we had a space where all the group members who had maybe engaged with that form or other types of bureaucracy could answer honestly to that form. And that gave rise to some incredible wit and really powerful responses. And of course, within a kind of archaeological project, which this is, it's interdisciplinary archaeology, we can really explore material culture through writing. Good writing is often about the concrete and the sensory, about stuff and about our experience of the world through it. The writer Natalie Goldberg, who wrote a very influential book called Writing Down the Bones, points out that close attention to specific names and material details make up history, both for writers and perhaps, I would say, for all of us, really. So paying attention to the concrete and sensory is better writing, and it really sits well with archaeology. I also hope that this process has kind of enabled us to play with language and enjoy English, because sometimes people's first encounter, and I wonder for some group members, is English as like something for form filling, is like potentially quite a hostile kind of medium, I think. So I hope that it's a way that we can really like inhabit, maybe occupy English as well, and kind of use it as an inclusive, joyful, fun medium going forward after this project too. So if we've done any or some of those things in this project, then I'm really delighted, and it's been a huge pleasure to work with this group and to hear all of your words and gorgeous pieces of writing. So let's hear some of that writing. I'm going to hand over now to Ferouz, who's going to introduce her I Come From poem, which, as I mentioned, is full of wonderful images and loads of humour and wit. So yeah, thanks for listening. Ferouz?
Hello everyone, my name is Ferouz, and I come from Eritrea, and my language is Tigrinya. And when I was a child, I moved to Sudan, the country border to my country, with my family, and I learned a new language. It was Arabic, and we moved to Sweden after 4 years, and now I live with my family in Sweden, and I learned a new language, and it was Swedish. And I am studying at high school now, and I have been here for 4 years, and I love very much Swedish, and yeah. And then now I'm going to show you my poems that it's telling about my part of my life in Eritrea, Sudan, and here in Sweden. Enjoy it. I come from hot nights in college. Our home was a mud hut. Windows, some squares, some triangles, no glass. I come from Ade and Jonas Kaidnes, sitting in the shade of a big tree and reading my geography books. I come from Injera زجني شوتبولة فول طعمية مسحون and the falafel. Man ska inte slänga mat. I come from my dog Jack, who is still in Eritrea, and my cat Ruta that I had to live with Rina in Sudan. I come from bruises and scratched legs when my brother taught me to bicycle in Husmofors. I come from red, yellow, and the blue Fiore, Jabana, Adidas, and the riding on the bed of a pick-up. I come from my Barbie that my father threw into the shit pit because I and my cousin fought over it. I come from swimming in the clear water of Utrön, throwing mud from bottom at each other, paddling canoes, scrambling, sweaty, and dried up Midasvalen to the mast on the top. I come from icons on the wall and the flowy white dresses for church. I come from swearing in Swedish so my parents don't understand. School is important. Respect your elders. My grandfather shot a lion.
She's so brilliant. Feroz, do you have anything else to say?
No. We're listening.
There are so many good lines, but I still, my father threw Barbie in the shit pit is the best one. So now we're going to move to Owen, who is, this is Owen, and he's brilliant, and he'll introduce himself.
Hello. Yeah, well, first of all, thank you everyone for coming and being part of this. And I really want to give a massive shout out to Rachel for bringing together such an amazing group of people. Personally, over the last several months, I've been really grateful to be part of this new, really warm, supportive community and to meet amazing new creative collaborators as well, as we all are. So like Rachel mentioned, I'm Owen and I'm a participatory filmmaker and a visual activist based at the Pervasive Media Studio in Bristol's Watershed Cinema. And like Rachel mentioned, we were obviously originally going to be spending a few days together, all in Oxford, and doing some workshops and creating some videos of everyone's personal objects. Obviously, however, that wasn't possible. However, because of that, it did open the door for us to a potentially much more innovative and a much more original way of actually creating our films. Personally, what I do, I'm a really, really passionate believer in a practice called participatory filmmaking. And in this practice, rather than external practitioners or external filmmakers or film crews coming into a community to create films about or to that community or that group, films are instead created by that community. And through these films, we hold discussions as a group to investigate that group and our shared experiences, to learn in collaboration with each other, and also to visualize ways in which we can create social impact through our work. Through holding forum discussions and co-creating films in this way that are entirely authored by people with lived experience, it means that people that have lived experience of the issues that are being represented on film have control over their own narratives, which is really, really crucial and is really key. Through that community having control over their own narratives, they, or rather we, have the power to challenge any false and any manipulated narratives that are often perpetuated by media and by power holders, to build our own critical consciousness and empowerment, to confront institutional power disparities, and above all, to speak truth to power. So, as part of the Made in Migration Collective, what we did was to run a series of workshops via Zoom, alongside Caleb's creative writing and alongside Sana's spatial mapping, just to introduce some basic concepts in filmmaking and in storytelling, and in how to capture good quality video and audio on our phones, and then to use the videos that were created as jumping off points for discussion and for further development. And over a series of weeks and over a series of sessions, we developed these films using various different exercises and techniques, from using zero dialogue in a film to using selfie footage, and from telling our story to the from the perspective of a personal object that everyone has. And each of these exercises was used to provoke discussion within the group, to provoke new creative practices and creative ways of working, and hopefully to foster new ways of perceiving our own and other people's stories. And I think what was really just incredible to me about all these sessions was, and what really struck me was just the incredible variety and the originality that everyone brought to their own films. I think, you know, whilst everyone was given certain tasks and certain impetus with which to create their films each session, what came back was so distinct and so individual, that I was just really so bowled over by the immense creativity that this group showed, and we used each of the different techniques that other people brought to the table to then use as inspiration for the way we created videos in the next sessions.
Hello everyone, I'm really excited to see such a big audience here, and it was a big privilege and a beautiful experience to work with so many creative people and to have this opportunity to express individual stories through arts in so many different ways, and just learn to be creative, which I did. Before you see the video, I just wanted to note another beautiful thing that contemporary archaeology taught me about. It's the thing was that I understood that it can touch social activism and politics and can raise important questions and bring to the audience of the world to see and react on it. And one of the aims of this project, to my understanding, was to dig into the bottoms of the migration. And we as migrants are victims of very harsh human rights violations in the form of dictatorship, wars, and in the form of nationalistic propaganda upbringing, and creating hatred among towards the other ones, so the different ones, so which resulted so that a lot of individual people suffered during because of this type of human rights violations. So this is what came out from the project also as an important message. So and you just see in these stories that people are subjected to forced displacement, and as a result they just leave everything, literally everything behind, and just take one thing with them and move to another place to create a new life. And that makes this project also very precious, because it mirrors the people of those migrants through this one precious thing. So this is what Rachel did. She just took those precious things and gave light to it, and through these objects tried to bring light to those individual lives of migrants. And I think that every time everyone in the world, whenever is being indifferent to the human rights problems on the planet, then on the next day these problems appear next to that person as a migrant neighbor, for example. Yeah, so it comes to everyone. So no matter if people are not talking about that. So I just wanted to give this message that came out from this project also for me. Yeah, so I really encourage everyone who is taking part in this project to be part of creating, bringing human rights justice to the world. I think this is important. If everyone contributes in a small way, that's possible. Yeah, and I'm sure that after this session, everyone here will, whenever you see a migrant outside on the streets, you will ultimately see the unwilling journey that person went through after he or she is standing in front of you. So I think it will come together with that person. So you will think about that, I'm sure. So and I just want to leave you with a question that Saratel always asks in his workshops with teenagers. Just think about this question and have in mind during this session also and in future. What would be that one thing that you would take with you in the moment when you leave your burning or about to be bombed home? What would be that one thing that you would take with you? Just think about this. And we can just shift to the video and proceed. Thank you. Hi. My name is Rajni, and I want to tell you about this cup. Its name is Art River Cup. It was originally made in Armenia, but it used to serve coffee in a library cafe in Aleppo, which was named Art River. So Art River is not there anymore, but the cup keeps the memories of the place. It is made of clay, and it's handmade, and each piece of them is unique and exquisite. It has a beautiful drawing of sun of prehistoric times. So it has an uneven surface and has a very special smell. It smells very nice clay, and when you drink coffee with it, the smell merges with the coffee smell and the spices in the coffee and becomes something very different, and it's a very amazing experience to drink coffee with it. It reminds me some music, and it makes me go deeper into my thoughts. So I'm very much emotionally attached to this cup now, which makes me experience a time and space which I have never been to and will never be in my life, the Art River Library Cafe, which is not there anymore. So yes. Hi, I am the Art River Cup. I was named so after I left Aleppo and my lovely job in the library cafe named Art River. I used to serve coffee there to the visitors. Meanwhile, witnessed a lot of students studying hard, a lot of tough conversations about truth, reality, and opinions, a lot of people's self-development, while reading a book, immersing into it, and then coming out of it as a different person. Aleppo is not the same anymore, and it will never be recovered. A lot of young people who used to drink coffee and meanwhile contemplate and have discoveries are not alive anymore. Art River is gone, but they still call me the Art River Cup. In fact, I am the art reaver now. Who said that life should be always the same? Time passes, things disappear from our life and become one part of us. This is called life.
Thank you so much for that, Rajani. And I think everyone, from those two videos, I think everyone will be able to see how incredibly complex these stories of migration are, but also how genuine and how authentic and how creative above everything else. So thank you for that. Anything else you want to finish up on?
Just a last comment on another a positive result of a migration, I would say. Saratel is from Syria and I'm from Armenia, and we wouldn't meet maybe because if this migration wouldn't happen, maybe this war wouldn't happen. It's funny to say like that, but yeah, bad things happen, but also these beautiful things also happen. Like we met and each other. Yeah. So that's it.
It's true. Cool. And I will now throw it over to Caleb finally to introduce the praise poem.
Yeah, really moving to see the coffee film again in the moment of pouring the coffee down the drain, which I'd forgotten how poignant that is. And yeah, so really beautiful work. So we're going to see a film that we made of the praise poem, which we did as a kind of activity to round off the process of that series of sessions that we were working on. This comes from a version, as I mentioned earlier, by a poet called Mark Strand, and he repeats this phrase in a section of a poem, just "I praise." And the way that I've tended to use it in groups is to offer a prompt. So for example, I'll say, praise something about yourself, because I know people find that difficult. And I want people to praise themselves, or praise something about the group. So that's kind of how we started it. And then we refined it down a bit and then made this film. And I don't think what you don't see on this film is me asking everyone to do face warm-ups before we performed. So I hope there's none of that, because it was very silly, but quite fun. But anyway, so there's here is our praise poem.
I praise the dignity of you all, my friends and colleagues.
I praise bringing together poetry, filmmaking, storytelling, archaeology, and all of our histories, cultures, languages, experiences.
I praise our shared laughter, the humor and the funny that shared.
I praise the program because I learn about many different cultures.
I praise different history, emotion, and creatively work.
I praise the health that the world had.
I praise the poem writing that reconnected me back to my homeland.
I praise the wit and power of answering back.
I praise the power to overcome hate that this group of people have.
I praise that we are human beings who have chance to destroy the ideologies and plans of politics.
I praise how the project had brought back a lot of memories.
I praise the diversity of the group and how everyone can contribute on their own levels.
I praise the supportive spirit that the group had, which let us stimulate our creativity to express memories.
I praise using mind maps and poems with gaps.
I praise doing all my homework like good student.
I praise how I dared to make a film and dance and speak English in front of the camera.
I praise understanding migrant experiences in much more depth.
I praise understanding the pure bureaucracy that's tackled by being a migrant.
I praise that I discovered that human beings are very similar, not like the medium shows and try to put us in the boxes and divide us.
I praise learning about many different ways of making and drinking coffee.
I praise understanding that people are just walking stories.
I praise that I met you all and we are together creating new methods of research. It is so exciting.
I praise that I will always try to say what I feel And I discovered that the creativity is a good way to say what we want.
I praise one day being able to visit your families in Syria and Eritrea and Armenia and Azerbaijan.